Welcome to the Limitless podcast. The Limitless podcast is centered around exactly that, being limitless. Hunting, fishing, fitness, nutrition, adventure, disabilities. What may be covered during the Limitless podcast will be, well, limitless. Stay tuned for this episode of the Limitless podcast. Limitless podcast listeners, we have a great guest on the show this morning, and I am stifling the excitement. I don't want to come over the top this morning through the mic, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I am being very calm and collected this morning, but I have a gentleman that I've recently connected with through some outdoor friends that has an amazing organization. But before I introduce that gentleman, we have to do a sponsor update for this third season. Right now, we still have several returning sponsors for the Limitless podcast. And I want to reiterate, when I say sponsors for the podcast, that does not mean that they are paying for the show. That does not mean that they are directing the content or the release velocity or the facts or opinions that are expressed on this podcast. These sponsors are purely for your benefit as a listener, and they are part of this show because they are companies and products that I use personally. I have some type of connection with those companies, and I trust and rely on their products in all of my outdoor adventures. So let's go from the top. Hunting Day Coffee. I usually have a cup of coffee when I'm recording, but I've already had my allotted amount for the morning. So I do not have a cup of Hunting Day coffee in my hand or at the desk this morning, but I do want to share that they are a faith-based coffee company out of Virginia. And when I say a faith-based coffee company, I mean that the co-owners, husband and wife, are a man and woman of faith. They raise their family, their kids through faith, and they are avid hunters and coffee drinkers. So that is Hunting Day Coffee. That is a 10% discount on any order through their website, and that is limbitless10. You have to spell that right. That's LIMBITLESS, just like the podcast show. So next up is On Point Adventure Foods. Again, this is another faith-based husband and wife, but they're out of Pennsylvania with freeze-dried food. Incredible. Again, that connection, faith-based husband and wife, great people, 10% off any order of their website. And again, that is limbitless10. Then we have Wilderness Athlete. I'm a huge fan of Wilderness Athlete. That is what I'm sipping on right now. It's a little bit of their hydration mix. 20% off any Wilderness Athlete product on their website, and that's limbitless20. And then we have a boutique hot sauce, the Love Sauce. That is veteran-owned, veteran-operated. Good friend of mine. He's a retired Navy guy. He owns that company. That is 10% off any order from his website, $12 or more, and that is limbitless10 as well. So once again, all of those are for your listener benefit alone. No kickbacks to Limitless Outdoors, Limitless Podcast, or the Limitless Service Group. They are strictly for you. Please use those codes and enjoy. All right, so with all that said, now let's start getting a little bit excited. Sitting here in front of me, if you're not watching this on YouTube, which you should because the backgrounds are great, and you can see faces, you can see smiles, but this is Patrick Tyndall. Patrick Tyndall is the founder, and I do believe the president of Ironman Outdoors. That is a faith-based outdoor nonprofit out of South Carolina, and they have been around for 19 years. Patrick, thank you so much for taking your time to get on the show today. And let's talk about your nonprofit and faith in the outdoors.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks so much for having me, brother. You you did quite an introduction there. My story begins really back in 2002. I was teaching a couples Sunday school class at a Baptist church in Columbia, South Carolina. Nothing special about me. I'm very average in almost every way. But we began to notice we had this issue in our Sunday school class. We didn't have any men. And Aaron, I really thought it could have been me. Maybe they just didn't like me. Maybe they didn't like the way that I taught the Sunday school class. I read a book from a guy named David Murrow, who actually is writing another book now, but he wrote a book back then called Why Men Hate Going to Church. And I began to marinate on perhaps there's reasons that men don't want to come to church. It's not that they're not interested in God. It's not that they're not interested in faith. Maybe they're just not interested in this classroom style, hospital, white walls. I have to look a certain way, have to dress a certain way, I have to talk a certain way when I'm at church. Maybe men are not interested in that. So I began to take groups of men on weekend hunting and fishing retreats. Back in 2002 is when we first started taking guys on retreats. And something very interesting happened on those retreats. Atmosphere is key. All right. So let me tell you my little illustration on that. There is a store that is one of my favorite stores. There's a couple of them here in South Carolina. When I get out of the truck, I follow turkey tracks painted on the parking lot that lead me into the store, which is shaped like a giant log cabin. There are thousands of fishing rod tips on one wall. There are hundreds of gun barrels on another wall. There's taxidermy everywhere. And I feel at home at Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's. Bass Pro Shop sells atmosphere just as much as they sell product. And there's a reason that when we guys, particularly outdoorsmen, when we go in that store, I can walk around in there for 2 hours. My back doesn't hurt. My feet do not hurt. I feel comfortable. I'm at home. But you take me and my wife to the department store, to Kohl's or Macy's or somewhere like that, and man, 10 minutes, I'm looking for a place to sit down. I'm already tired because it's not my atmosphere. So what we learned in my Sunday school class 20 some years ago was that you've got to put men in the right atmosphere to talk to them about spiritual things. They need to be in a safe place where they can take their camo off. All right. And let me tell you what I mean by that. And I'm just gonna hit you with a lot right here in the beginning, Aaron. I know how to act in front of my mother-in-law. And I know how to act in front of the boss at the staff meetings at work. And I know how to act in front of the guys at the hunting club on Saturdays. And I know how to act in front of the pastor of the church on Sunday. And what I'm doing, Aaron, is I'm putting on different patterns of camo to blend into whatever my surroundings are. All right. And men need a place where somebody can see you without your camo on. We need a place where we can be authentic and we can be transparent and we can talk about things that we really are struggling with. And most men do not have that kind of place where they can be genuine and authentic and take off their camo. They're sure not going to do it at church, right? Mm-hmm. We wear some of our best camo. We wear Sitka at church, right? Because we want everybody to think that we got it all figured out and that our family's great. And, last Sunday was Easter Sunday. Everybody was dressed beautifully and we have our kids there and we're all sitting in church on time for the most part. And we want everybody to think we got it together. But on the inside, Aaron, what I have learned is that men are struggling and they're struggling with the same things and pretending that they don't. And we need a safe place where we can talk about that. So what our ministry is focused on taking guys on hunting and fishing retreats and creating that right atmosphere where we can have our manhood discussions, is what we call them every evening, and we can take off our camo and we can connect those men to Christ in the outdoors. That's basically what we do.
So that's absolutely amazing. And I think this conversation is going to have several deep rabbit holes depending upon how you and I manage our time together during this recording. But I want to touch on a couple of things really quick before you start moving on. The first is the book that you mentioned, Why Men Hate Going to Church, for listeners. It's available on Amazon. The author, David Murrow, that is David, David, and Murrow is Murrow. There are several editions on Amazon. I would encourage listeners to jump on Amazon. Affordable paperback. There's this one that I'm looking at right now is $11.81, 2-day delivery. So there's the book.
He's writing a second book, by the way.
Is he?
He's writing a new one of why men like going to church. And he's doing it right now. I just talked to him 2 weeks ago. He interviewed me on a Zoom because he's doing research to try to that there is a movement, there is a revival of young men in this country. And you can point to Charlie Kirk or whatever you want to. There is a revival going on of young men coming to church and coming to faith. And David Murrow is writing a second book. And he interviewed me a couple weeks ago to talk about that. So that's pretty cool.
That's great. So I'm going to use myself as an example right now to drive your point home, Patrick. I'm going to rephrase that. I am a recovered, I'm not in the process of, I'm a recovered 30-year atheist. And when I say recovered 30-year atheist, I gave my life to Christ on January 17th of 2024. There was no going back. That the recovery process was Romans 10:9. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. It was instantaneous. There's nothing else that we need to do. You are saved. Your sins are forgiven. That happened in a moment. I fought that for 30 years. But for the following year, Patrick, I struggled. I did. I struggled until I finally went all in and I started walking away from all of my worldly connections, those things that tied me greatly to previous sins of my life. And when I started going to church, I immediately recognized the fact that the men that were there, some of them are struggling with masculinity. And I'm not saying that they're struggling with their genetic identity. They know that they're a man. There's no confusion which restroom they're going to use, but they're struggling with their masculinity in just being a man and being a male Christian leader in their life, in their home, in their church, in their ministry activities. They're struggling with doing hard things. And when you put a man in an environment where he can take that facade off and interact with other men who they don't shake your hand in the foyer and say, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, everything is great when they're not, right? You call it putting on camo or face paint. It is a straight up facade. Yeah, everything's great. Yet you might be addicted to alcohol. You might be addicted to synthetics, maybe illegal drugs, pornography. You might be cheating on your spouse, your girlfriends. You might be lying or cheating at work. List all of the things that we can be struggling with as men. Yet when we walk through the doors of the church or when we sit down in a organized Bible study, we're not willing to expose those weaknesses and those things that we're struggling with. And I was one of those guys, Patrick. And it wasn't until I truly I just handed it all over to God after a year of struggling. And I connected with, I'm wearing a hat right now. It's called Men's Alliance. And that ministry is for men only, and it is tribal, rugged, and real. We can talk about that more later on the podcast or offline, but if you haven't heard of Men's Alliance, I think you need to be introduced to it. It is pulling men out of isolation and putting them in an environment where they're with biological men only. They're around a fire, they're doing a workout, they're doing a real world devotional, and it is geared towards shedding those facades, getting that camo off of our face and being real with each other, and helping each other get through the struggles that we're dealing with, that's going to lead us closer to God. And the mission statement of Men's Alliance is sharpening men to be the husbands, fathers, and leaders God designed them to be. That's key. Designed them to be. It's not what we want to be. It's not what the world is leading us to be, not what corporate is leading you to be, or the outdoor industry. Name all the different pathways, Patrick. It's what God designed us to be. So I think it's amazing that your foundation is not only in faith in Jesus Christ, but it's leveraging the wonderful world of the outdoors, which the term wilderness, depending upon what version you are reading, but in the Bible, the word wilderness is referenced over 300 times. I don't know if you're aware of that, Patrick. And that's not
Did not know that. That's great.
That's not counting the desert or anything else. And in the time of when the Bible was being written and documented, they considered the desert a form of wilderness as well. But it's the actual word wilderness alone, again, depending upon what version of the Bible that you are reading, it is over 300 times from the Old Testament through the New Testament. And when you look at the Bible, Patrick, everything is based on the wilderness, where we were, what was created first, where man was created, where man governed, where man struggled, where man walked through, where man was challenged, where the manly version of God was tempted and challenged, tried to be deceived. All of that was taking place in the wilderness. Where did John the Baptist baptize Jesus Christ? In the wilderness. And you have founded your organization in the wilderness. It's biblical.
Well, there's also a verse in Romans chapter 1 that basically says, when we see the beauty of creation, we are without excuse. There is a God. And you can look outside your window and you can see that there is a God. And there's something about sitting in that stand early in the morning before anything starts making noise, and just watching the earth come alive every morning from your tree stand. I mean, that does something to your soul. And I think it connects us to our Creator. We don't worship the creation, but we worship the Creator. But yes, there's something powerful. And men are getting further and further away from the wilderness. We're getting more and more into the suburbs. And
comfort.
I mean, the guys that come on our retreats, I ask them, have they shot their rifle before we're getting ready to go hunt a giant whitetail? Have you sighted in your gun? Well, no, I don't have anywhere to shoot. So we need places to go where we can even sight in our guns. I mean, that when you live in a neighborhood and you're on top of one another, you don't have that. So yes, appreciate all your comments.
So tell us a little more about Ironman Outdoors. We understand that it is a faith-based outdoor organization for men. Talk about what your requirements and what you do.
So we are a retreat-based ministry. Okay, so basically what we do is retreats. And I remember the first year, 2007, we had three retreats that year. And I looked around the guys in my Sunday school class. I'm like, y'all think we can really pull this off? I mean, that many? This year, we will have 50 retreats in about 10 different states. And right now, we have over 40 on our website that just got posted recently. And these are all for the fall. A lot of these are deer hunts. We go where men want to go. We like to hunt big deer. I mean, there's deer everywhere, pretty much. Maybe take Alaska out of the equation, but there's deer everywhere. But we want
There's
to hunt
there's
big deer.
there's deer
We,
in Alaska, Patrick.
yeah, well, when I went to Anchorage, I saw moose, but I didn't see any whitetails. But there's probably some there. Yeah,
There's blacktail. They're called
blacktail.
so Sitka, Sitka blacktail deer. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. But we want to go where men want to go. So we have weekend retreats. The ministry actually leases a lot of property. We have 2 different ranches in Texas in the hill country that we lease. We have 9 different farms in Western Kentucky that we lease. We have 7 different farms in Ohio that we lease. We've had big chunks of property in Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina. We've done stuff in Illinois in the past. We want to go and we want to take men where the big deer are, because there's something powerful about getting in your truck with, especially if you have a group of you, 2 or 3 guys, you buddies, and driving 9 hours and going away for a weekend. Most of the time, you don't even have cell phone service, which is a good thing. And you
Mm.
sort of unplug for a weekend, and it allows guys to really focus on what's going on in their life. They don't have all the day-to-day distractions that they do back home. They really try to get away for a weekend. And we hit them with questions. We hit them with pretty hard questions in those manhood discussions. Literally, we hit them with questions in their tree stand. We'll text them if we have service. We will text them, hey, tonight we're going to have a manhood discussion on godly marriage. And what does a
Mm.
godly husband look like? Hey, man, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your marriage? And we'll let them think about that from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 8 o'clock that night. Come back, we'll have a big dinner, and we have a manhood discussion that night on marriage. And I will have guys that have texted their wives, "Hey, how do you think our marriage is?" Like, what would you give it on he might think it's an 8, and she might say, "Well, it's really a 5, maybe a 6." Well, why is that? And what are some things that I need to do as iron sharpens iron? One man sharpens another, Proverbs 27:17. That's where the Iron Man comes from in our name. But you need to rub shoulders. I need to rub shoulders with some other guys who are doing it differently, right? Because in Proverbs, it says, all of a man's ways seem innocent to him. In other words, Patrick thinks Patrick's doing it right. But when I get around some other men, man, there's something different about his marriage. What do you mean I'm supposed to be praying with my wife? What? Yeah, we say the blessing before the meal. No, I'm talking about holding her hand before you go to bed at night. Hey, what can I pray for you tonight? And she shares her heart, and you share your heart, and you both are praying together. You want to talk about something that'll do a lot for your marriage? Try that. But these things don't happen unless we're intentional about it. And sometimes getting away for a weekend on one of our retreats and rubbing shoulders with some other guys, you get intentional about starting to do some of these things in your life and making changes in your life. If you're struggling with sin, you fill in the blank with whatever that sin may be. The only way we're going to get control of that is some accountability, right? Men need accountability, but we live in a world of faceless, nameless social media. I can be anonymous. I can say anything I want. I don't have to, I don't have to be accountable to anything. No, that's not biblical. The biblical model is iron sharpening iron. I am supposed to be in an iron sharpening relationship with another man. What does that look like for Patrick? For the last 23 years, I've got a guy named Nathan. He was my co-teacher of that couple Sunday school class 23 years ago. And we have met for breakfast at 6 a.m. at the same Bojangles, which is a fast food restaurant. If you don't have one, you need to find one. And we eat a Cajun filet biscuit, and we talk and we look in each other in the eyes, and we talk about things that are going on in our life, things are going on in our marriage. Hey, Patrick, you're going to Texas this weekend. Last weekend you were here, and 2 weekends before that you were in Kentucky. Hey, man, when's the last time you took your wife on a date? I need that kind of accountability, and that's biblical. And so these are some of the things that we talk about on our retreats.
That's incredible. So, fun fact, the first Bojangles that I ever went to was down in North Carolina in Man, I want to say it was probably 2011. Might have been 2011, maybe 2010.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a pretty good chicken and biscuit. Okay, it's not healthy for you, right? You don't need to eat it every day, but once a week when you're doing accountability, I think it'll be all right.
Yep. Grabbed a couple of Bojangles and headed out on the bass boat.
There you go.
And we were fishing a body of water outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So I love it. I Are the men given any idea prior to showing up what some of the questions or topics they would be presented with, giving them more time to think or prepare, or is a lot of it just done on the spot or day of and only giving them several hours to prepare?
We try very hard to manage expectations. Okay. Some of our guys that come on these retreats, they've never paid to go on any kind of hunt. Some of them have never hunted out of state before. And so we try really hard to manage expectations because we have some guys, even though they paid, $700 to go to Ohio for a weekend retreat, they think they're going to the King Ranch, right? You didn't pay 7,000, you paid 700. So we have on our website, we have a detailed PDF flyer for every single one of our retreats. Here's what the stands look like. You're going to be hunting out of Millennium ladder stands. That's what we use because they're safe and they last a long time. Here's what the beds look like. We got pictures of the bedroom, right? And here's the schedule. Here's the agenda. We're going to hunt from this time to this time. And then we're going to come back and we're all going to have our dinner and our manhood discussion at night. And so all of that information is laid out. Some of the topics of the manhood discussions are laid out in our PDF flyer that, hey, we're going to talk about being a husband. We're going to talk about being a godly father. We're going to talk about things that men struggle with. And we leave it at that. And so a guy goes on the website or he looks at us through social media. And when he books that retreat, he knows, okay, this is a Christian organization. We're not trying to ambush anybody with the gospel. We're not trying to play gotcha, but they want to go and kill a big deer, and we want to talk to them about Christ. But hey, we're pretty serious about killing big deer too. And I want to tell you a story in just a minute about a 200-inch deer that was killed on one of our retreats just a couple of years ago. But yes, manage expectations, and but we do sort of go with the flow a little bit on those manhood discussions. For example, we have had. Let me tell you a real quick story, Aaron. We had a guy came from Ohio on a hog hunt in Alabama, hunting wild hogs. He was not originally on the retreat. In fact, somebody called us about a week ahead of the retreat and said, is there any way you can get this guy on the retreat? His marriage is bad. Like, it's real bad, like hanging on by a thread. And I called one of my volunteers. We have 114 pro staffers and field staffers is what we call them. They're volunteers and they help lead all these retreats. Patrick cannot lead 50 retreats a year. And I called one of my pro staffers who's leading that retreat. And I said, hey, man, I know that the retreat is full. We don't even have another bed, but I got a phone call. This guy really needs to be on this retreat. And my volunteer said, hey, man, I'll sleep on the back porch if that's what it takes for this guy to be here. So this guy drove all the way from Ohio to Alabama. When he showed up, they literally thought he'd been drinking because his eyes were red. He had been crying all the way from Ohio to Alabama. His marriage was falling apart. He did not even know if his wife would be home when he got home on Sunday. There had been unfaithfulness on both sides of the marriage. And it was like the devil just dropped a bomb inside this family. And it was shrapnel and explosives and people. It was bad. During that weekend, those guys put their arms around him. They helped him make some sense out of a difficult situation and said, hey, man, your marriage is worth a lot. What's a marriage worth? It's worth fighting for. It's not worth giving up on it. And the devil, if your marriage wasn't worth so much, why would the devil go to such great lengths to tear it apart? Your marriage is worth fighting for. And he began to describe to these guys his lifestyle. And he said, hey, I make good money. I'm an over-the-road trucker. I drive to California and back, and make good money doing it. And I provide my wife and my kids, I provide them with everything that they could need or want. And those guys that weekend came around him in those manhood discussions and said, hey, man, maybe you need to sell that truck and maybe you need to be more local. And he got to thinking about that. He called his wife and said, hey, if you'll be there Sunday night when I get home, I want to have a conversation. I want to talk with you. Please don't leave. I want to talk. He prayed all the way back. We got 9 other guys that were on the retreat with him. They're all praying too. He gets home that night. He tells his wife, he said, I'm selling my truck and I'm buying a dump truck and I'm going to be local delivery and I'm going to be home every night. And I want to do everything I can to save this marriage. Aaron, that's been 3 years ago and they're still happily married. And so I'm not saying that a retreat can always change your life, but sometimes a retreat can wake you up spiritually and open your eyes, take the scales off of your eyes, and you can see clearly that, hey, my marriage really is worth fighting for. And so on a weekend like that, the manhood discussions were very focused on marriage because that guy was there and everybody poured into him. But you know what? Their marriages were better when they got home too, because of being a part of that. So
That's awesome. That's again, that's a representation of what are you putting first in your life? And if God is not first in your life, other things are going to suffer. Certain areas might be successful at that time, but somewhere down the road, those things are going to suffer. You are going to start experiencing failure, and you might be providing financially for your family, but what are you not providing? Spirituality is one thing, and then being present as the leader in your home is another thing. And if you're not being present as a leader in your home, you're not being present as a leader in your marriage. And 100% Satan is going to take wild advantage of that.
seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what is this application process?
The application process to come on a retreat?
Yes.
So right now, if you go to ironmanoutdoors.org, you will see over 40 retreats this fall listed on our website. They are in 10 different states, and they range anywhere from $400 to $3,500. The $400 one being a doe and pig archery retreat in South Carolina. Can't hunt bucks on that particular piece of property, but we do have permission from the landowner, and it's a really good piece of property. We do have permission from the landowner to shoot does and pigs with bow and arrow, crossbow, whatever archery you want to use. And then on the upper end of that dollar amount, that $3,500, is we got a very nice 1,800-acre ranch in Texas with protein feeders. Everything that they could possibly need is right there, and you got a legitimate chance of killing 160, 170-inch deer.
Okay.
So you go on the website and you can pick and see a lot. Some of them are already full, but many of them have openings, and there's some great hunting on all of those retreats.
And how many men are you typically hosting at one of these retreats at a single time?
Yeah, 8 to 10, maybe 12 at the most. I mean, it kind of depends on the property, and it depends on how many beds we have in the lodge. But with all of these, no more than 12 at the most. I mean, you think about it, it takes a lot to hunt 12 guys. And some of the retreats are as small as 5 and 6 because it's a smaller piece of property, but really good property. So I mentioned we have leases, but we also have what I call, by permission type retreats. We have a really good one in North Carolina where a guy that we know who's a friend of the ministry, he owns about 800 acres, and he doesn't want to lease it and he don't want to give it to us, but he will allow us to come for one weekend. And it's usually the opening weekend of rifle season there in central North Carolina. So it's great. Mid-November, it's a great weekend to be there. And he does that just because he loves the ministry,
Okay. How would a group of men or another organization be able to take an entire event and tailor it to them?
If you'll reach out to me personally, I mean, yes, you can look through the website, and my information is all on the website too, but reach out to me individually and I'll let you know what we've got available and what we could sort of tailor and what would work best for your group, both in geography, like location. I mean, some people don't want to go all the way to Texas. They want something closer to them. And we do that frequently. We have groups of men, buddies, veterans sometimes. We've had a whole group of law enforcement guys that all came on a retreat one time. That was an interesting group. Boy, they had some stories, So church groups, we can do that. We can accommodate all of those.
Okay. And you talk a lot about gun hunting. You did talk about a doe pig archery hunt. Do you have a lot of archery hunts?
We do. We have a lot of great retreats we've got one whole ranch in Texas that we basically have set up for archery. And so you're hunting ladder stands and pop-up blinds, near feeders. That's kind of how they hunt in the hill country of Texas. A lot of fun. You see a lot of animals. It's a target-rich environment. We've got some land. We got 7 different farms in Cambridge, Ohio, which is almost all archery. We have 1 week of shotgun, like right after Thanksgiving, but everything else, the other 4 or 5 retreats we do in Cambridge, Ohio, they're all archery. We've got some great property in Kentucky. I will tell you one quick story about an amazing deer called Brutus that was killed in Kentucky just a few years ago. So we've got these farms, and some of these farms we've had for 15 years. We've had the same farm, same leases for 15 years in Kentucky. And this one particular farm, we've always had this genetics of not real wide, but real tall.
Mm.
And we had this deer that we saw on camera for 3 years, and we named him Brutus. Fine deer, mainframe, typical 12-pointer. Only about 16 inches wide, but a mainframe, typical 12-pointer. And on November the 1st, just a few years ago, a guy from Alabama paid $550 to come on our retreat with his bow, not a crossbow. He shot it with a compound bow. He had 3 arrows in his quiver, and he killed Brutus. Brutus came to a corn pile on November 1st. The only thing we ever had we would get 1 or 2 pictures a year of Brutus in daylight. We'd only get 4 or 5 pictures total, but we knew he was on that farm. And strangely enough, that farm, our farm that we lease, is private property. It is adjacent to public property. So this deer was probably living right on the edge of some public hunting ground. When he walked out, Jason put an arrow through him, made a pretty good shot, but he spined him. All right. So the deer's laying there. When you spine a deer, he falls down immediately, but he's not dead. I mean, he's still flopping around, and so Jason, the second shot he shoots from the stand, misses. Clean miss. I mean, the deer's laying on the ground, clean miss. Now he's down to his last arrow. He climbs down. At this point, it's like, 5 minutes before dark, and he belly crawls to within about 10 yards of Brutus and puts one in, and finally to finish off, and the deer expires. All 10 guys on the retreat, they all, they're texting, "Hey, I killed Brutus." Everybody came in the woods. They celebrated. They took pictures. There was no jealousy. Everybody was genuinely happy that Brutus had been harvested. They carried him out. They took the straps and they took their belts off, and because they didn't want to mess up the cape. It was in Kentucky, they said it was 100 yards in the woods, but 100 yards in Kentucky, that for the rest of the planet, that means that's about a half a mile. They carried Brutus out of the woods with their belts and some ratchet straps like a king, like Pharaoh. They were toting him out, and they got him out, and we got him measured. He scored 203 was his green score. After he dried, it was 195 and some change. And the only reason he didn't score higher is because he had a couple of kickers. And when you're scoring a big deer like that, kickers can throw you into a non-typical situation, and the score is not as good as it would have been if it had been typical. But that story, there's a video of that on our website, on our YouTube channel, Ironman Outdoors on YouTube. Look up Brutus, 203-inch deer. Just a great story. So we are serious about connecting men to Christ in the outdoors, but we're also serious about killing big deer.
So you've mentioned deer, you mentioned hogs. Talk to me about turkey, bear, elk, exotics. What else is there?
So we do have, we just had a turkey retreat last weekend. Was opening weekend in Texas. We had 6 guys. and they killed 5 gobblers on that retreat. And
Mm.
the 6th guy missed, right? So we could have been 100% on the Rio Grande gobblers. That was last weekend. We've done some pheasant hunting in South Dakota. We've got a great friend up there, Kevin Telvedal with Pheasant City. We partner with him to do retreats there. We have done a bear hunt in Maine one time. We struggled to book that. Quite honestly, it wasn't the most popular thing, but we've done elk. No, I'm sorry, we've done bears. What I meant to say, we've not done any elk, just because that's a whole different ball game. We've done waterfowl. We've done goose hunting in Illinois, which is a lot of fun at the end of January, in a pit blind on a cut cornfield covered with snow. That's a lot of fun as well. We have done saltwater fishing, reds, speckled trout. We've done flounder gigging retreats on the coast of South Carolina, which is interesting. We've done shrimping retreats on the coast of South Carolina, which is a unique thing that we can do in South Carolina, where we can actually bait for shrimp, and then we throw a cast net over them, and you can keep a 48-quart cooler full of shrimp per boat per day. So that's a lot of fun. So anything that guys want to do, we want to do it with them and share the Lord with them.
Are those shrimp down there? Are those the Royal Reds, or are they a different type of shrimp?
I don't think they're Royal Red. I think they're white shrimp.
Okay.
But I'm not a shrimp expert. But they are wild. They're in the bays, Charleston Harbor, Bulls Bay, a couple places that we go shrimping here in South Carolina.
All right. Talk to me about disabilities or disabled hunts. What do you have for
Yeah.
men?
So there are, we're not set up specifically. There are lots of ministries and organizations that do hunts only for disabled folks. That's not us. However, we can accommodate disabled folks on our retreat, because we want to talk to those men about Christ as well. We have had a blind guy come on a retreat with us in Alabama, and he had this thing that he could hook up his iPhone in front of his scope, and he could see enough to where he could, with a little bit of help, he could get on the deer. He did not kill a deer with us the weekend that he came on the retreat, but he had killed other deer before. We have one of our ranches in Texas. We did build a handicap ramp. We've got it set up to where a guy in a wheelchair can be comfortable in that lodge. We can get him on the Kubota side by side. We can take him out. We've got some of those big ground blinds. If you think about it, a typical ground blind, you got a zipper and you've got to sort of squeeze through a little narrow hole. But they do make some ground blinds that are large, and we can literally fold them over top of a guy in a wheelchair and conceal him. And so we have a partnership with a wonderful organization that gives us a scholarship each year for 2 handicapped men to come on a retreat. And so, we welcome guys reaching out to us, and we'd love to talk with you about that. I think they're going to do that again this year for 2026. We will have availability for 2 guys to come with us on one of our retreats. We'll probably take them to Texas. It'll probably be an archery retreat, but we can do that with, we have crossbows available, that kind of thing if they need that. But that's kind of who we are.
So you do have availability for 2 disabled hunters annually.
And that's through the scholarship, where that other organization donates money to pay for those 2 to come for free. Any guy, disabled or not, can come on any of our retreats. As long as you're over 18 years old, you can go on our website, and we would appreciate if you give us a heads up, though. Let us know that you're coming, so that we can be sure that we've got everything lined up and we can accommodate you. We want to put you in the best situations to make you successful. So sometimes that takes a little bit of doing behind the scenes to have it set up right.
Okay, so 18 is your cutoff.
So we do men age 18 and older. However, we also have father-son retreats. And the father-son retreats, the boys are usually between the ages of about 9 to 15. And like in Kentucky and in Ohio, we're doing a special father-son retreat this fall, a couple of them, where it is a special season. So the boy gets to carry a rifle in Kentucky, like late October, before the rut. There's been no rifles fired in Kentucky, but the boy can carry, the dad can sit with him, will sit with him but the son can carry a rifle, and we take advantage of those 2-day seasons. Same thing in Ohio. There's a 2-day season, November like 20 and 21, or 21 and 22 this year. And we're taking fathers and sons with a gun, with a firearm in Ohio, which is going to be fun.
And you've talked about providing crossbows. Do you have the ability to provide rifles, muzzleloaders, shotguns, depending upon where they're at and how they're hunting?
So technically, no, we cannot do that because of our insurance. But if you'll reach out to us, we can accommodate that. We can have, perhaps a friend can loan one to somebody, but Ironman Outdoors cannot provide a firearm per se because of our insurance. But
Okay. And is there meat processing on site at all of your locations? How does that work?
yeah, so we have a lot of guys who maybe they've never been hunting or not been hunting very much, and they harvest an animal and they say, well, what do I do now? So we've got some great volunteers. I mean, great volunteers. Okay. I try to get people to understand this is better than an outfitter. An outfitter goes and hires whoever he can find that he can pay the least amount of money to guide you. And that guy's going to be, dropping bad language, probably not going to have a great attitude about it. We've got volunteers in our ministry. I'm talking about strong Christian men who are there because they want to serve others. They have the heart of a servant. And I like to say that hired help don't work like that. Our volunteers work way harder than any hired help would. And so if you harvest an animal, we will help you. Obviously, if you've killed a lot of deer and you want to do it yourself, man, hey, have at it. Here's the skinning rack. Some of them we have a walk-in cooler. Other places we just have big deep freezers full of bags of ice, and we can put them in coolers. We'll help you get your game taken care of. We do have relationships with processors and taxidermists in all of the areas where we do retreats. So we can help you get it mounted. We can help you. Sometimes you might have to go back after the fact and pick up the meat if they can't have it ready in a short period of time, depending on when you kill it. If you kill it on the first day of the retreat, they can probably have it packaged and everything ready for you to go by the last day of the retreat.
Okay. All right. That's amazing. Talk to me about some of your fishing trips. You said you're doing, some shrimping, and you're doing some reds, and you're doing some floundering. Um, what do those retreats look like compared to a hunting retreat? Is it the same footprint? I would think it might be a different amount of time. How does that look?
You mentioned that you had Joby Barton on your podcast recently,
A
right?
couple 2 months ago, yes, 3 months ago,
All
maybe.
right. So he's the pastor of a large church in Jacksonville called the Church of 1122, Jacksonville, Florida. So our ministry has about 10 or 11 volunteers that all are a member of Joby's church. And they're all very plugged in and connected to that church. They also, most of them own boats, and they love saltwater fishing. I mean, that's why they live in Florida, right? They love doing inshore fishing. So one of our volunteers down there, he owns a house and on the coast right there with I mean, literally you walk down the dock, you get in the boat. He allows us to use his house for those retreats. We'll have 4 or 5 of those volunteers will bring their personal boats. They fish this area all the time. They know where the fish are. They know what's going on. They're not professional guides, but I would argue in some ways they're better because they live there and they know what's going on. And we'll put 2 or 3 guys in each boat, and you'll go out, you fish in the morning. We'll come back, have a lunch if you want. You can have lunch out on the water if you want. We can make sandwiches, and then we'll come back and we'll have a big dinner in the evening and have a manhood discussion, just like we would on a hunting retreat, except you didn't necessarily have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't have to necessarily worry about your scent.
Well, you do have to worry about scent a little bit. I'm
A
real
little bit.
when
Yeah.
I'm fishing. You don't eat bananas in the boat,
Right.
and you do have to care for whatever scent you're going to put on that lure or add to the
Yeah.
bait.
You don't put on sunscreen and then handle the bait. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent. So you've been at this for 19 years. Where are you going with this organization now that you're knocking on the door of 2 decades?
So I'm reading a book, and I don't have it right here beside me, but it's called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And I think it's Eugene Patterson, I think, is the author. A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. I feel very passionate that God has called me to do this. Okay. This Patrick could not come up with this on his own. Me teaching that Sunday school class was one step of obedience 25 years ago. Hey, would you teach this couple Sunday school class? I had never taught a Sunday school class before. I didn't feel qualified. I got into that and I read Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life. The first sentence, the first page, the first paragraph, it says, "It's not about you." And that hit me right here. And that led me to go to seminary because I felt God was calling me to do something, but I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. So from 2003 to 2006, I attended seminary and
Where
graduated
at?
from seminary.
Where at?
Columbia International University, right here in Columbia, South Carolina. A little known place in the world, but they train a lot of missionaries. In fact, Billy Graham once said that if he had it to do all over again, he might have gone somewhere like Columbia International University for his education. But anyway, people were asking me when I was in seminary, Patrick, what are you going to be a pastor? Are you going to be a missionary? What are you going to do? And I said, I do not know. Even my own father said, son, why are you doing this? You have a good job. And I did have a good job. I said, Dad, it's not about a career. It's about a calling. And I feel like God's called me to do something, but I don't know what. Well, my last semester of seminary was in 2006. And my evangelism professor, he looked at me and he kind of like stared into my soul, right? He was looking into me and he said, Patrick, he said, that thing you're doing with those retreats, he said, that could be bigger than your Sunday school class.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, he's right. So we formed a 501c3 in early 2007. And those guys from my Sunday school class were the original board of directors. None of us had any idea what we were doing. We were in way over our heads, but God blessed it. And God has continued to bless it and opened up new doors in places. You know, like I have guys they call me and they say, you know, hey, Patrick, we want to get a good deer lease. Like, hey, can you help us get a good deer lease in Kentucky? Like, how do you find all these leases? We don't look on Facebook. We don't look on the internet websites for leases. God opens those doors. We have a lady who is a church organist in a little Baptist church where we happen to know the pastor. She owns like 4 different farms that we lease from her.
Oh,
And they
wow.
are terrific deer hunting. But you see, God opened that door, not Patrick. And so we are going to continue to go in the future with this ministry. We're going to continue to go where God opens the doors because it works a lot better when he opens the door instead of me trying to beat the door down. But I feel called to do this. I feel uniquely equipped and called to connect men to Christ in the outdoors. I feel called to lead these manhood discussions. I do a lot of writing of manhood discussion material. For example, I don't have it sitting right here beside me, but Aaron, you just trail cameras. All right. Who don't love trail cameras? Who don't love cellular trail cameras? All right. Let me tell you this quick story. We leased this ranch in Texas, and the ranch manager is a guy named Colt. Of course, you're going to have a name like Colt when you manage a ranch in Texas. And I love Colt to death, but Colt says, hey, you can't run cell cameras on this ranch. I said, why? He said, you don't have good enough cell service. I said, challenge accepted. So I went and found, do you know what a directional antenna is?
I do.
Okay, like the antenna on your truck, you know, just sticks up straight. It's omnidirectional, right?
Right.
It's going to pick up a signal from wherever. But a directional antenna is more, you mount it horizontal and you point it. So I bought these directional antennas off the website, and I point these antennas. I download an app on my phone called Open Signal, and it tells me where the closest cell tower is to that camera location. And I point that in that exact location, and I take a piece of conduit and I raise it up about 15 feet in the air, and I buy a long cable to hook it to the cell camera, to our Tacticam reveals, which is what we're using. And all of a sudden, I went from maybe 1 bar to 2, sometimes 3 bars, and I'm getting reception, and I'm getting these, and I'm sitting in South Carolina showing pictures to Colt, who's in Texas. I'm like, hey, man, look at this buck we got showing up at the feeder. And he's like, how in the world Did you get a signal? We have to be intentional about that. So I wrote a whole manhood discussion, and I've got one, we're visual, guys are visual, right? We got to have visual aids. I've got one of these directional antennas mounted on a little pole that I use in a manhood discussion. And I say, guys, if you want to be a godly father, if you want to be a godly husband, you have got to have your antenna oriented on the cross.
Mhm.
You've got to have your antenna oriented on Christ. You've got to have your marriage focused on Christ. You've got to have your business focused on honoring the Lord. You've got, in everything you do with your children, are you orienting them towards Christ? And that's a powerful manhood discussion that uses something that we all love, cell cameras. And I think it communicates and it speaks volumes to men. And it's real easy for us to get off, right? Just a little bit. Well, we bought this place at the lake, and we got to go up there every weekend. And next thing you know, we haven't been in church in 3 months. Or, hey, my kid's on travel baseball, and there's nothing wrong with travel baseball. But next thing you know, we look up and we're 180 degrees. We're focused on us,
Yep.
not God. And that's a powerful manhood discussion that we do. And I feel like God's called me to do those kind of manhood discussions for these men and to do these retreats. And so, yeah, hopefully it's going to be a long obedience in the same direction.
So you're talking about being intentional and the degrees of being off when you start becoming, when you focus that intention off of God and off something else. So Men's Alliance, within the first, probably Men's Alliance has a podcast. I'd encourage you to listen to Men's Alliance podcast. Within the first half dozen of the podcast, in the early stages of Men's Alliance podcast, they're short. They're 5, 10, 15, 20-minute podcasts, easy listening. The founder of the organization is a retired Air Force pilot. And one of his early podcasts, and it's an amazing devotional. And it's a 30-minute or less devotional, and it's so powerful. It's called 1 Degree Off, Patrick. So when you look at a compass, you can see how minute 1 degree off is. It's a sliver. So if you and I are standing in the same place, shoulder to shoulder, and we both have a compass in front of our bodies, I don't care if it's a small Silva compass. I don't care if it's a military style orienteering compass, or if it's the compass on your iPhone. It doesn't matter. Pick your compass. And we're standing shoulder to shoulder. And I have my compass dead on north. And you take your compass and you put it at 1 degree off of north. When we're standing shoulder to shoulder, and you and I start walking, and we walk a mile straight on that heading, never deviate. So we are 1 degree off from each other for a mile. When we each hit that waypoint at the 1 mile mark, after walking a perfectly straight line, 1 degree off from each other, we are 60 miles apart, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that astounding?
Yeah, and you're thinking chronologically, if you're not, 1 month leads to 3 months, leads to 6 months, leads to a year, and all of a sudden you look up and you are a long ways from God because
Yes.
of the small degrees that you missed along the way. And I'm not saying that those things were sinful either. It can be perfectly normal things that you focused your attention on that got you off track with God.
Yep. We Saturday I visited. So Men's Alliance are called tribes, and there's a tribe and about an hour south of the tribe that I'm the tribe leader at Shore Tribe, and we call them our sister tribe. They're an hour south of us. The guy that founded that tribe was a member of our tribe, and I was down visiting them, and we're sitting around the fire last Saturday morning, and the gentleman leading the devotional that morning was talking about identity. What do each of you identify as or with? And through that devotion, we start talking about, what we identify as and what we're being intentional with. And I'm not saying right now on the podcast that in order to be a Christian, you have to go to church. It's not what the Bible says. And in fact, the apostles were incredible Christian men. That's why it was their path with God, with the Lord. And they started founding churches. They didn't have churches in the beginning, and they didn't have Bibles. So they were Christians before churches and before Bibles. But in modern day Christianity, church is a really easy thing to open the eyes of a man. So we're sitting around the fire, and I said, hey, let's do some easy math. Of the 168 hours in a week, if you're only being intentional in your walk with Christ for 3 hours on a Sunday morning, and that 3 hours, Patrick, can encompass your drive to and from church and your time in church. And if that's the only time that you're committing to Christ, and on that drive, you're probably not even focused on God. You're talking with your wife, arguing with your wife, not happy with how the person in front of you is driving, weather related. Maybe it's turkey season, maybe it's deer season, maybe it's elk season, maybe the rockfish are in season, or steelhead are running, or name the thing that occupies your mind as an outdoorsman. Or maybe you're big into Harleys, and you got a group of friends that don't go to church, or their wives don't go to church, and they're out on a ride and you're not. You're in the car driving to church. Maybe you're late and you're frustrated that you're late and you're going to get to church late. Think of all the things. And then you go to church, and when you walk through the doors, you're probably telling everybody that you're okay, and you're not. And you sit in service and you listen. And then when you drive home, your mind is already thinking about what you're going to do when you get home. You might not even be conversing with your wife about the message that was placed on your heart during that hour you were sitting in a chair or a pew. But anyhow, for the math, that 3 hours and that 168-hour week is 5%. 5% of your week, if you have a 3-hour block on Sunday morning that is focused around church, maybe not truly focused on church or faith. And again, I'm not saying that you have to go to church to be a faithful Christian. I think you should. But if that's only 3 hours, that's only 5% of your week. Are you truly being intentional with your Christianity, with your focus on Christ? And my answer would be no. I'm an avid outdoorsman. My mind is always thinking about hunting and a little bit of fishing. I'm always thinking about what season is next. And my passions are turkey and deer. And I love elk hunting, but I'm getting away from that. But I'm always thinking about where that next hunt's going to be. And I love backcountry hunting. I love being somewhere with a pack on my back and getting away from the roads or the trailheads or the other people. So I'm always thinking about those types of hunts, and I do it for deer, turkey, and elk. I love it. So I'm always planning. I'm always in a planning phase. I'm always in an execution phase. I'm always recocking my gear, figuring out what works, what could work better, all those things. And when I'm not doing all of that, then I'm thinking about doing a little bit of fishing. I do not like yard work. I could care less what my lawn looks like. I don't like sitting in traffic, but I love the Lord and I love my wife. And if I am focusing 25% of my life on hunting, and I'm only going to focus in my faith during that 3-hour window on Sunday morning, how much time am I focusing on what Aaron wants? That's not even truly, I shouldn't even say truly, it's not benefiting my marriage. My wife supports it, but that doesn't necessarily make her happy. She's happy because I'm happy, but is it truly benefiting my marriage that I'm so focused on hunting? Not really. So, when you look at that, where am I being intentional? Am I being intentional on my walk with Christ? Am I being intentional in my marriage? Or am I being intentional selfishly on what Aaron loves?
Aaron, those trophies on the wall, and I've got 8 or 10 of them hanging up in here. I got it blurred out, but they're in here, euros and shoulder mounts. Those trophies on the wall aren't going to mean a thing in eternity. Let me share this quick story with you. There's a church in Kentucky that unfortunately closed their doors, and the Baptist Association owned the building and the land, about an acre of land. Well, they were paying for insurance, they were paying to mow the grass, they were paying for the water and electricity, but nobody was meeting in that building. They reached out to us and said, "Hey, we know you guys are doing ministry in this area. Would you like to have this church building to do for retreats?" So, of course, we said yes. And they signed the deed over to us. And we've got this 1970s church building in Western Kentucky that we've turned into a retreat center. We've put Sunday school, the Sunday school classrooms are now bedrooms. The fellowship hall in the basement with the full kitchen is we got leather couches and stuff down there. That's where we do our manhood discussions. So, this is a quick story. I put out a newsletter to about 7,000 folks on our newsletter list. And I said, "Hey, does anybody have any taxidermy that they would be willing to donate to the ministry so that we can decorate this lodge in Kentucky, which used to be a church? We're trying to make it look less like a church and more like a lodge so that we can put men in the right atmosphere to tell them about Christ." Aaron, I had in one time in the back of my wife's car, we had 13 deer heads that somebody had donated. I had a guy from Iowa donate a deer. I had people from Missouri that donated deer heads. I probably had 25 deer heads that were all donated to the ministry, which is really cool. But just think about that for a second. There was a guy who worshiped hunting and fishing, who probably hunted all the time to try to kill that big deer. And 20 years later, 30 years later, however long it was, it's now taking up space in somebody's garage and they want to get rid of it. So they donated it to a ministry, to a nonprofit. You know what I mean? So that just tells you these trophies really don't mean much.
They don't. They don't. And you need to be intentional with how you're living. Yep.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, sir, we've been going at it now a little more than an hour. Is there anything else that you want to share or that you want to talk about in regards to Ironman Outdoor, your mission, faith? Anything else you want to say?
Hey, I just wanted to let guys, if you're listening to this and you think this sounds like something cool, you'd like to come on a retreat, hey, don't be scared of us. We're all struggling, right? We're all sinners. None of us have it all figured out. There are no tens in the room on these retreats. Okay. Patrick's marriage, we struggle too, right? But we're doing it with God's help. And we're getting around a group of men to be intentional about sharpening one another spiritually. We're intentional about praying Numbers chapter 6 over our daughters and our sons, to being a godly father, to Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, give you grace, and give you peace. We want to be those kind of fathers. We want to be a Deuteronomy 6 kind of dad. These things I've commanded you, teach them to your children as you walk along the road, as you lie down at night, paint them on the bed, on the doorpost of your home. We want to be Deuteronomy 6 kind of dads, but we're struggling just like everybody else is. But if you'll come on one of our retreats, you'll be around a group of other men, like-minded men who love to hunt just as much as you do, and who also want to be a godly father and a godly husband, and who think their marriage is worth a lot. And it's worth taking my wife on a date every week. And it's worth reaching over and grabbing her hand and praying with her every day. And don't be intimidated by any of that. And maybe you want to hunt some places you've never been before. Hey, come with us. We got some awesome properties where God has opened some doors to get to hunt some really, really great property. And we do it at a fraction of a cost of what you would pay if you went with an outfitter. We're not outfitters. We're volunteers. But we want to talk to you about the Lord. And go visit ironmanoutdoors.org. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And if you got questions about any of that stuff, all of my contact information is on the website. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about what that would look like. If you're struggling with something and you just need an encouraging word, or you just need an ear that's non-judgmental, give me a call. I'd love to talk with you about anything like that.
Patrick, that's fantastic. Hey, do you mind if we close this recording out with some prayer?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to pray for you and your organization. Do you mind?
Absolutely.
Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this incredible morning and having the opportunity to share it with Patrick as he walked us through this incredible ministry you have placed on his heart and his soul and his life, Lord. 19 years, Lord, he has been committed to your calling. He has been a witness and an example for so many men that you have placed in his life, Lord, merely because he answered your call and he presented himself as a vessel of faith and an image for other people to learn from and to grow with, and guaranteed a pathway for men to be saved, Lord. Lord, I ask you today that you bless this episode, that you use it as a tool to bring other men closer to Patrick and his ministry, Lord, so that through that process, those men can get closer to you, Lord. As in Proverbs 27:17, Lord, as iron sharpens man, so does one man sharpen another. And Lord, this ministry and Patrick is following that call, being faithful to you and sharpening other men as that iron sharpens iron, Lord. Lord, we love you and we praise you. Lord, we love this beautiful wilderness that you created for us and that you created us in, Lord. And I'm so blessed to be here this morning listening to this amazing story about what you have done through another man of faith. Lord, we worship you and we praise you in your amazing name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Again, everybody that's listening, couple of recaps. Great book available on Amazon, Why Men Hate Going to Church. If you are currently a man that has a drug problem, and that drug is your wife is dragging you to church, I'm going to ask that you get on Amazon and you spend $12 and have this book shipped to you and you read it. There's a couple of other books that we could chat about. Joby Martin's a great author. And his most recent book, which is Stand Firm and Act Like Men, you should add that to your reading list as well. But I encourage you to check out that book. It's highly recommended by Patrick. If you are a man that is looking for a way or a tool to improve their walk in faith, their life, their marriage, their relationships, go to Ironman Outdoors and invest in your own future. So look at it this way. You are killing more than two birds with one stone. If you sign up for a hunt through Ironman Outdoors, you're going to go on a great hunt. And if you're an outdoorsman and you like to hunt, going on a guided hunt is a great experience, especially when it's affordable. So you're going to go on a great hunt. But you are investing in your own relationship and walk in faith with Christ. And in doing so, that is going to bless your relationships at home being your spouse, your children, your friendships, and the church that you may be dragged to and or could be serving in. So I am encouraging any man that is listening to this episode that you check out Ironman Outdoors. And if you are disabled, I am going to encourage you to look into the scholarship program through Ironman Outdoors. I want to thank everybody for their time. Please like the Limitless podcast. please leave us a review. Please share Limitless Podcast. And I look forward to recording the next episode. Patrick, thank you again, and be limitless.